to welcome you all to the meeting this evening. Just want to start off by saying that this meeting is not to discuss the bypass. That's matters that are being dealt with in a different forum. For your information, the Transport Minister is going to penciled in a meeting to come down and speak to residents in March. The 21st of March is a provisional date, so if there's any issues related to the bypass, that's the time that you can take it up with Transport Scotland and the Minister for Transport for Scotland. I'd like to introduce Vince Tait and David from Scotland TRANSERVE, who's the operational company for this area, and they'll be doing a presentation shortly on the findings from the study that we've carried out. This is further to the meeting that we had down here in September, which residents had asked for us to look at further measures to try and tackle traffic speeds through the village. So they've done their survey and their investigation, and this is feeding back on that with some options. So that's basically sets out the reason for the meeting. If there's any issues related to maintenance or other matters, we can take a note, but we're not here to deal with that tonight, but you can certainly raise them, or there's going to be comment sheets at the end of the night that you can fill in with any comments about what we discussed and anything else. And you can fill that in, either send in or email in to Vince Tait at Transport Scotland, and we'll deal with it as it comes. So I think without any further delay, I'll pass over to Vince, who's the Road Safety Manager for Scotland TRANSERVE. He's done an investigation and got a presentation on options. After that, we'll have a discussion, time for asking questions. We'll try and answer them. If we can't, we'll take notes and feedback to our teams in Transport Scotland, and we'll take it from there. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for coming out on a Friday night. Appreciate as well the weather tonight's taking a turn for the worse, so it's good to see people venturing out and that. I don't know how many of you were actually here at the last meeting. I presume obviously there's a few faces I recognise, of course. I am obviously through that. There was came on the back of the summit that was done. These are really to my first slide. Came on the back of the City Gallery Summit, because there was a commitment to look at the issues, not only in Springholm, but also in Crocketford, but tonight we focus on Springholm. We've looked at the results of the previous speed management measures which are out there with the speed indicator signs, the speed activated signs, the updated gateways and the slow markings. And there's a commitment made there to look at additional speed management measures in Springholm. So, looking at a quick bit of the background on the situation in Springholm. Again, this is looking at this from the previous slide of the accident record, that there's only been seven accidents in the last 10 plus years in Springholm, 2 of which have been in the last 3 years. However, the last HGV accident was in 2010. So again, that comes with the way we deal with things in the strategic and safety aspect of the bottom. So we look at along the moving cursor, we call it, which is where the cursor effectively runs along the network at 100 metre intervals. Pick up sites where there's 3 or more accidents. So Springholm's never came up in that due to its accidents. However, we were asked to look at, and as we all know here, due to the speeding issues. As you know, before, after continual monitoring of the speeds through the village, as we said in the previous one, is that we're starting to see some positive benefits from the measures, some reductions in speeds. Again, this is continuing. We've got a meter again just this month, and again that's continuing. There is one though that's causing us a bit of concern, that's heading out of town at the Western Gateway. But again, usual situation when the people start to go out of the village, they will speed up. Again, it's something we want to try and keep on top of. We've got the data there. That's effective everywhere. When people start to see the 60 sign, they will start to speed up. It's a natural thing, but it's something we want to keep on top of. It doesn't make it right, of course. Derek's got copies there. I know from George Henry's presentation, who was Derek's predecessor, was with me the last time, he was talking about the strategic safety plan from 2007. When we were talking about that, we were in the process then of updating it to a 2016 version. This is now the 2016 one is out live, and we're now working towards that. So as you can see from that, one of the actions, action 14, is speed management in towns and villages, which is of course where what we're trying to achieve here sits perfectly. Within that, however, because we're working with a trunk road, and trunk road has its own specific facility in terms of to allow the movement of all types of traffic. We are restricted in being able to use heavy engineered solutions in terms of a lot of things. So allows us to look at such proposals where we can look at other ways to work towards reducing speed management. Also within that we have what we call demonstration and safety projects. I'm bringing this in just obviously with the wee key cursor. I've seen a few using the notes, you'll see there's a couple of little things in there that are slightly not out of the norm. But again, it allows us to use solutions that are a bit more...
Can I ask if you would maybe talk a wee bit slower?
Yeah, sure, sorry. No worries.
I can hear you well enough, but I just don't know.
No problem, sorry. So, as I say, we've got the demonstration ones. So that allows us to use more innovative solutions where, due to the nature of the road, we can't get in sort of traditional road speed management measures. If you look out onto the local authority road, you'll see speed humps. Sort of thing that we can't use on a trunk road, predominantly because of the height and makeup of traffic that we have. So we're utilising this and working using this action type and the action type with speed management sensibilities together to come up with some of the solutions or the ideas that we want to hopefully put into place in here just now. We've got some criteria for what we're looking for, a sort of design brief. So to look for options that we could put in that would help achieve or modify the behaviour of drivers and vehicles through the village. Further reductions in speed, and if required, we can use, as I've said, innovative measures. We're obviously restricted by the fact that Springholm and the A75 from here is still a trunk road. We're restricted by the fact that there is a number of properties close to the carriageway. There's a footway, and the properties are not the majority of it. So things such as widening and local narrowings through the town, we're kind of having to write them off because we need to maintain the road width as it is for its function, and we can't go outside that because of the properties. So, and again also, such as vertical features, we can't utilise on a trunk road because you've got so many. The biggest issue that we give is the noise. We've got enough noise of traffic going through. I'm sure these are all, that's what the explanation complaints here. If we stuck in a vertical feature, the noise coming from an HGV would be increased dramatically. So we'll pass those sort of measures again. So we came up with 3 realistic measures that we kind of think we can bring to the table here. Now bearing in mind we're trying to work on here on fixing a solution in here without taking on the whole, taking the situation away. We're having to work basically on the canvas that we have as A75 in Springholm. As Derek rightly said, the issue of trying to remove A75 from Springholm is for another forum that works. George introduced the fact that the other legislation that was being revisited, and that was said also at the summit, so they would look at the potential for other measures such as a bypass which should take the 75 out of Springholm. We're looking at making the 75 within Springholm and reducing the speeds as much as we possibly can. So one that we looked at is the use of virtual road bumps. It is, yes, it's paid. It does give us that feature whereby obviously gives that visual illusion of being a vertical feature. The one, of course, I've got pros and cons as we go on, but obviously the one con that comes with that, the one downside that comes with that is once you know it's a bit of pain, you realise you're going to drive over it. But ultimately, the people that are going to know that most are the people that are in this room and your fellow residents or commuters. Their issue tends to be HGVs. So we'll hit that percentage of traffic that will see it for the first time. It was introduced in Southwark in London. We've had a conversation with them in detail. They've actually seen a huge rate return on speed reductions from using these. Yes, they were using a 20 zone, so it's slightly different. As I say, it's a trial, it's the first time it's going to be used. And the thought is for this is to use it, but also potentially with one of the other measures that we've got as well. It's looked at either use it to replace the slow markings or work in tandem with the slow markings to try and get a best effect that we can get with that. As I said, some pros and cons, yet effective in London. It gives a visual illusion of a vertical feature, so drivers will slow down.
Think it would be right,
Yeah,
but it's not.
it's not. Ultimately, yeah, once you know it, and if you're driving there every day, you know it, but as I
Yeah,
say,
well, it's the same HGV drivers that are coming through all the time.
And commuters.
well,
I mean,
the thing is, we'll be looking at what there is on the B75. It isn't, because there's a high level of, there is a percentage still of, obviously drivers from other countries, drivers from Ireland, they tend to change. There's people coming down all the time, so you will hit a percentage. You're not going to hit 100%, but if we can get that percentage to reduce, we're still getting somewhere.
We wouldn't want them raised anyway.
No, but we physically can't, so.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, one other thing again, is the positive to it is, where we have physical measures in urban environment, you affect buses. And the bus companies are very loath to them because you affect the ride quality for their passengers. So these will have some effect, but they won't affect the buses. So we've still got to pay homage to the bus users, the public transport users on that environment as well. A second one that we're looking at is trying to reduce the speed as people come into the town even further. We're looking at improving the gateways by using what we call active road studs. These are actually studs that will light up. Similarly, what the way this system will work is that we'll have some detector studs on the approach, set back from where the gateway feature is, and we'll obviously set up a speed threshold, which will not be 60, it will be reduced from that, because we also want them to hit 30 within a reasonable amount of time. So anybody going over that speed threshold, they'll trigger the stud system. Currently there's a similar system, it works slightly differently on Sheriff Roundabout in Edinburgh, but the technology is the same, although the trigger for it there is slightly different. At present, what you see, that's the layout currently. Normally at the red light, no stud lit up. Now their system works by when it changes to green, it lights up the carriageway for the route. Ours would be using the same technology but a different trigger for speed rather than green light. We'll light it up to show that the gateway's there. Looking for an impact to try and slow the routes
So
down.
as soon as the traffic hits them, does that, with the speed limit, it comes up with the speed limit thing?
No, what will come up is the studs in the
They'll light up,
they'll light up.
but they
within the
don't
direction.
interact with the sign at all?
The sign will still activate the way it activates just now.
Ah,
So
right.
once they get past that, if they're still going over 30, the sign will still come up.
That won't stop if it's coming through over 30.
Well, this is one of the things that we've got. Yeah. Again, as I say, we quick one thing to try and put it into perspective of what you're going to see. So this is it as it is. Your gentleman is driving through at 30. The guy in front of the wall is to set up the sign as you can see in the background. If I'm now sitting in my car approaching this over our speed threshold, we'll get them to light up. So it's just to get that visual effect of you're coming into a different environment. That's what a gateway is there for, is to change the environment from the rural speed limit to the lower speed limit.
We're looking at innovative options that we can use on this road because we're restricted, as Vincent said, we're restricted by putting physical measures in because of the nature of the road.
Why are they in Crocketford? They have physical measures in Crocketford as they come in, do they not?
There's no houses either side of them, which are
Sorry?
Yeah.
there's no houses either side of them. I think
Is it because of the houses?
I think it's
There's no houses either side of ours either.
No, there's no houses either side of ours either.
Slightly out, and it's also historical and heritage.
historic, so I mean, as Vincent
But
said,
they have gateways, they have pinch points as they call them, I believe, when you come into the village. So what's wrong with having them there? There's no houses either side there, on that green banking.
Look at
It's far more of an effort than flashing lights. People,
Yeah.
you know, a couple of times, means nothing. It's like Christmas lights popping on and off. People, you know, they don't really have any relevance to people.
Take a note, we'll certainly.
I'm afraid, you know, it's window dressing this. It's window dressing.
Well, we're doing what we can.
I know, I appreciate that.
But we'll obviously take your views.
You have to have something that impedes people from speeding, not a flashing light.
That's what we're saying, but as Vincent said,
Human
we
nature
don't-
being what it is. Sorry.
Okay, we'll have a look at that.
Thank you.
If we were to do it here at Springholm, the width would have to match up with the width of the existing hatching at this location, looking at this picture. I'm obviously drawing a little picture of the other end in front of me because, as I say, we need to retain the width of other than going into the verge and doing some actual winding, which would then probably find us a bit. That was one of the reasons why we're going for stuff that doesn't, as I say, doesn't affect us in terms of the existing road width and road layout. So we're not reducing the actual level of what we have of the provision of the carriageway for being a trunk road at the moment. To say, width is your right, let's say we talked about there is that there, that's been inherited. We're trying to do stuff on here that we keep maintaining an inherited layout as much as possible because that's what we need to maintain. If we can fit one in there, certainly something we'll look at. It's something that can add to it. But also, again, as we say, what we're saying isn't the be-all and end-all. We're quite happy for suggestions, but obviously has to fit within what we can design and what we can physically do.
What we need is a deterrent, ultimately. If
Ultimately,
you
yes,
drop the speed limit to 20 miles an hour, they might come through at 30 miles an hour.
can I carry on and explain?
Sorry?
Thank you. To say then, if we look again at the pros and cons of this, Neil was to try and be objective to ourselves to what effect it will or won't have. I mean, it will of course increase the conspicuity of the gateway. We can look at other things along with like islands and things, or there was one of the small ones we talked about, some sort of small soft landscaping around it again to just enhance the fact that people are changing their environment. That's what, one of the big things about a gateway. It will target the main speed issue of vehicles entering the village and try to slow them down when they come in. Working in conjunction with what we're talking about, well, obviously with the slows, but with the 3 kilo dumps and slows or whatever, so trying to maintain the speed down along with the other measures. However, as I say, the cons are it doesn't target, this measure itself doesn't target the speed in the village. So again, we've got to work with the other measure. So, and the other thing, of course, we have is late braking drivers when the see does, but if we can, once these again, we rely then on the other people, the people that do use it regularly, so if they start to get to know it, they'll realise that they are hopefully change their pattern slightly. But if they don't, then they're still getting that target of the people that aren't regular users, will then realise they're coming into something completely different.
There is another con that you haven't mentioned, maybe you're coming to it, and that is that most of the speed studies, in fact all of the speed studies have shown that the biggest phenomenon of speeding in the vicinity of the gateways is not the inbound traffic but the accelerating outbound traffic. And you alluded to that at the start on the approach to the Western Gateway.
And the Eastern.
And the Eastern too. How would you deal with that? You have a speed indicator device there, that one located near the garage and stove store, and another one quite near Springholm House. But beyond that, they then accelerate.
As you say, from our results, yes, we appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're looking at is we obviously want to get the benefit over as much of the village as we can. To then put in another measure, the only thing is probably there says it's something at the gateway, slow them out, going out the gateway, and we're looking at that. But our main effect is to slow them out as they come in and maintain that speed going through the village. As I say, it is a natural behaviour for people to speed up. It's not acceptable, it's not right, but we need to look at how many measures we can put in. See, there is obviously there is an issue here with speed of traffic, as there is with most 30 mile an hour zones. But we can look into get things that can cover as much as possible. With everything like this, you're not going to cover every eventuality, but if we can cover it by adding to what we've got, then that's fair enough. If we can do it with this, then we can do it. As we've committed to completely, we've always done, we'll continue to monitor the effectiveness of what we've got. If it still tends to stand out, we can look at something else to go on.
But you do agree that that is actually the worst phenomenon for speeding in the village, borne out by all the studies that have been carried out. 10% of HGVs doing over 40 miles an hour.
I would agree with it because it's a phenomenon we see in every village. So it's something that we know, and it is a difficult thing to treat. So yes, you're right, as I've said, we can look at what we can do for it, but in terms of without actually being able to do physical measures to do it, there's not much we can do on that one, but we can do what we can. If it does mean that we put an island in at the exit and that pulls them back in, hopefully that works. If I continue to add in additional of what we're putting in with the virtual speed humps, that may add to it. But we can only we have to look at the majority issue, treat the majority issue at one time. Because we've got an issue through the whole town.
Village.
But if we're looking at from that 100 metres, 120 metres from the SID sign out, I'm very limited to what I can do there. And I put it in at one point, and
it's over 300. It's over sir. It's over 300 metres. In fact, from the SID sign. Well, you need to get the.
Yeah.
We're talking about facts here. The village is 1,300 metres long, and it's 300 metres plus from the SID sign between Craigview and Springholm House, and about 250 metres the one between the garage and the western exit. So that's a large proportion of the village experiencing hard accelerating traffic. And it is actually, on the various studies, the worst part of the traffic problem. So I appreciate your inbound measures, but the greater part of the problem is this outbound phenomenon.
As I say, we're trying to do what we can. If we can get them to manage the speed through the village, as we're doing on a consistent basis, then that'll have an effect there. We are continuing to monitor it. We're saying that. We will look at it. We're trying to use these features if we can. We know that Springholm itself is very vociferous for other measures. We know that there's other measures that are bigger than what we can do here, that Springholm's looking for. So that's for another forum. You're trying to look at this and what we can do here. We came here to present this, and if we can look at get other better suggestions or try other things, such as putting in an island if we can fit in, we can take that away. That's what we're looking to do.
Well, one thing that, of course, has been postulated is average speed cameras, and they wouldn't need any engineering measures whatsoever or any more road markings.
Average speed cameras are set to criteria. I know that this has been spoken about on numerous occasions. I know the same question was asked at the last meeting, and it's about the same answer as the last meeting. So set criteria for the average speed cameras based against speed and injury accidents. And Springholm unfortunately doesn't meet that criteria.
Sorry, that's political cowardice.
But that's political, isn't
I'm
it?
sorry, I'm not a politician.
I think
I'm an engineer.
we can cover some questions at the end. So let's carry on with this presentation. We can cover things like cameras at the end.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
To say that, we came on to the third one, which has been up there sitting for a while. There's two options towards this. We came up with signals at the gateways, which is the first one where we would have a set of traffic signals put in isolation on their own, and it would be what we call reverse speed discrimination, which would utilise changing it to red if it detects a speeding vehicle. Successfully done in Fairley, but again that was utilising a junction, so this would be slightly more innovative than that, which would lead us back to that demonstration project. Again, one of the things we're talking about with this is that, again, it's at the gateways, it's near the edges of the village. It could work both directions quite happily. It is basically what, again, it detects the vehicles by a set of studs. Again, if they're over the speed threshold, it gives them a red light and holds them. Second option is we have two junctions in Springholm. One of which obviously is just here at the shop, and the other one down at the housing estate, where again we actually have turning vehicles. So traffic signals obviously are more commonly seen at a junction, so we could transpose the same methodology onto the junctions, one or both, depending on how the feeling goes. And again, we do the same thing. I think Derek, we were talking earlier about this, and there's a village, is it Newton Village?
It's a village on the 904 in West Road.
It has a very similar scheme. It's split like this, but it has a signal basically technically red until somebody approaches it at the correct speed, and then it lets them go. So again, it's the same sort of thing. It's penalising them, bringing them back down, stopping them if they're speeding within the town. This, we've had a scheme in Fairley, where there was obviously a very unfortunate accident with an HGV, which led to a whole number of measures going in Fairley, but one of them was a traffic signal scheme with reverse speed discrimination on it. Here's some of the pictures from it to sort of show how it operates. If you look at the first picture on the left, you can see that the VES is activated showing the slow down message. And the VES activates from the same point as the traffic signals. The VES, of course, operates from, you can see the piece of camera type thing on top of it. And the picture on the right, I've highlighted because there's the two detector studs in the carriageway. That is what triggers the traffic signals. So they're set to the same point, the same speed threshold. So if they trigger that somebody's going over that speed threshold, you can see that the black bar on the left picture is the one that's done it. The traffic signals are now changing to red. So if he gets the signals, he'll have a red light, stop, and ready to obviously penalise him for the fact that he was over our speed threshold. We could mock up there of what it would look like. It's of course near the Eastern Gateway. Set of signals, vehicles stopped, haven't been held back by his fellow cars who weren't speeding, continue on their way. Again, though, there's a number of pros and cons to this. It'll slow down drivers who've seen the speed limit, it'll penalise them, they'll get held back. We'll change their behaviour, it'll reduce the speeding from Fairley. We're starting to see a profile where the number of drivers that were triggering the speed, the lights was dropping off. So there's a lot more drivers that are actually obviously realising that to drive within the speed, they'll get a continuous journey. Similar to how specs cameras work, as we all know, that if you start to see it with the large number of vehicles they drive, a continuous speed and it flows, so we get that. A red light clearly is more effective than a vehicle activate sign because it has a lever back and it stops you.
Yeah,
and there's a penalty if you go through a red light. So opposed to my con, my downside, the ones at the gateways where there's not a junction, drivers will see it and go, you know, there is a potential there for people not complying and going through. Again, that's generally the wanted driver that's going to break it anyway. That's the person that's going to do the one anyway. And again, from the Fairley example, we are seeing some of that, but a lot of the times, the majority of what we're seeing is happening at the early hours in the morning, or it's certain types of drivers, they've obviously been decided. You do see the odd one that goes through, but we're all in that dilemma. So once again, we're also conversely with our number of activations dropping, that's dropping off as well with what was happening. So people are beginning to really understand and accept it. course, the one big downside again goes back to the noise and pollution. We're stopping vehicles. We're stopping them on their journey. So the noise and pollution that comes from a vehicle starting isn't good. Which is why, if we were to do the gateways, we would try our best to keep it away from frontages. We pick sites away from a frontage, so it's not out directly outside somebody's house. If it comes into the junctions, then we're obviously flowing it into where the properties are. Now, one other thing is that, again, if you stop people, you maybe get compensated the speeding. But, as I said earlier, the use of the virtual road hump scheme would be a complementary scheme in one of the other two, or both, or whatever, so that would hopefully maintain that as much as we could. And again, we'd be monitoring that with the speed monitoring stuff. As I said, we did look at some of the more.
Sir, before you move on from that, could I ask a couple of questions on the traffic lights?
Yeah.
You said it would be there'd be a trigger point. Have you any idea? Would that be like 5 miles an hour over the posted speed, or what sort of?
It's something we have to discuss with our
Well, you'd allow a reasonable amount of latitude.
Oh, it should only be 1 or 2.
Right.
It's probably, in general terms, I mean, you look generally 10%. I mean,
Right,
but we
yes.
we can change up and down.
3 miles an hour.
So you're looking at 10%. I mean, obviously, you'll remember when we first put the vehicle activate signs in. Now, I know it was an unfortunate miscalculation by a sign supplier, but the amount of times they pick on them. So again, with the lights, you don't want them going off continuously.
Yes.
So we do have to have that. And we think we also want to have that operation because you also got to hand back. The same reason as why there's that percentage discrepancy in it with the enforcement issue for older speed, people's speedos. But yeah, we would keep it as low as we could because then people will learn it. We're not going to chuck up to 36, 37, something like that, because that's pointless. It would be so people then get that continuous speed through us, we're trying to gain, so they come in. If we put it, say, at this junction, for example, on this side, you come in, you get to 30 sign down, you come to 30. You come to here and you're still at 32 and you go through. But if you come to here at 34, 35 and you stop, you soon, if you do that every day, you soon adjust your speed by that 2 or 3 miles an hour, which is the change we need.
Well, it's reinforcement, isn't it? It's positive reinforcement.
I've experienced a similar system in Portugal last year. I'd never come across it before, and I was driving through the villages and you're kilometres in this high-end car and you're a bit confused. And you're trying to match your speed all the time, and you're coming into villages, and I kept getting stopped at these signs. And you can't read the signs because they're in Portuguese, you don't understand them. Eventually, after the second day, I was like, I see how that works now, right? I've got to make sure as I come in, not when you see the thing, when you're coming into the village. And you soon work out, and I have to say it's a very good system. I'm driving around Portugal thinking, I wonder if we could get in this system in Britain. I was actually going to bring it up tonight to see if there was a system. So what you propose tonight, bringing that system in, is I'd be all for that.
Yes.
The first time we've certainly done it in Scotland, I'm not sure it might even be the first time that's been done, because the normal speed discrimination is whereby if you've got at a junction like that, it would be if a vehicle's coming at a higher speed, it would extend the green time so they can clear to take away from the conflict. So it's gone against the normal sort of a road way of operation, and it has obviously came in from Europe. And to see we're getting positive results from fairly the fact that we're starting to see that profile dropping in the activations, which because the number of vehicles going through isn't dropping, so obviously people are behaving themselves and just realising what they've got to do. Because again, fairly similar to Springholm, we've done the previous measures with the VAS, we've done it with the slow markings, so to introduce it there was the next step. So it's one of the measures we want to look at, because I think it's one of the most controversial in terms of what we do, because depending on how we do it, because you're obviously introducing something to stop vehicles, so that's always going to have a controversy around it for people, but it could also be the most beneficial thing to do.
Well, it's our lives are at stake, we deserve it.
Obviously,
I think it should help with the HGVs.
Yes.
Because one of the reasons they speed, I've driven very heavy vehicles, and one of the reasons why they speed is to maintain momentum. Because if I pull out my house and I do 30, and one of them's right up the back of me, you can see them trying to keep going. You get to the end of the village, and I'm gone, and he's still there trying to wind it up. So I know they're keeping up 34, 35 just to keep the momentum going. And if they know they're going to get stopped at a red light, as long as they're going to stay within, hopefully that will be enforceable.
If they then stay at 30.
If they will soon tell that you stay at 30, 31, 32, you're going to maintain that momentum. So hopefully it will work.
I mean, there's the one obvious thing with all of them like that is the compensated speeding. And our first concern is the compensation speeding, people changing their speed profile within the village. Now, obviously, it affects a car or a motorbike, a smaller vehicle more because they can speed up a lot more than an HGV. Well, that's the one thing. But again, that comes down to us monitoring it and making sure we know what's happening. I think it's something new, something different. It's good to hear that somebody's had a positive experience, not a positive gets stopped the first 2 days, but
Yeah,
I don't understand it.
I think it does work. Well, it worked on me, and I wasn't intentionally speeding through.
And you can
I was more confused than anything.
You can even read the signs.
I could read the signs, and I used to drive at 30 kilometres an hour or 40 kilometres an hour, so your brain doesn't run at that speed. So,
I say, if we looked at some of the more hard engineering things, which I say back in our speed management towns and villages thing, it's kind of restricted with the makeup of a trunk road. We looked at the junctions as well, things such as many roundabouts. Again, we're looking at the potential if you do that, you're putting all things at risk. You're looking at chicanes, it then narrows the risk. You've got vehicles having to stop all the time. So instead of just, there's no opportunity for them to not be penalised, they have to be penalised. So all you're doing there is defeating the purpose of a trunk road and its ability to take people from A to B successfully. We're also then upping the environmental issues significantly because you've got so many more starting manoeuvres, emissions and things like that, so that's why they came out. So the 3 measures we came for are the sort of 3. I know they're quite different and soft, but that's the 3 measures that we sort of came to. Obviously, we're quite happy to listen to other suggestions as well. Just that's kind of the finish of what we're doing in Springholm. Just a little update on things that we've got also on the A75 out with Springholm that will be getting done this year. Just because I know obviously from the summit, the A75 played a major part of what the discussions were. For the Freesing Galloway, and it is obviously the biggest road in the Freesing Galloway, the longest road, and it carries a significant amount of UCB traffic. We've done a study this past year of A75 accidents, and the centre of that accidents was HGV accidents on the A75. Now, clearly the level of HGVs on the 75 is significant, and it's significantly above the level on the rest of the trunk road network. But against that, the number of injury accidents involved in an HGV was even higher. So the main thing we did was to understand where HGVs were actually the vehicle at fault, the vehicle that caused the accident, created the accident, and was involved in the accident. So that again was still a significant thing. And out of that, I think the serious majority of them, about 90% of them, were single HGVs. So you can start to see the pattern coming in that it's HGVs running with alone. Within that, and then becomes the speed as the contributing factor for the accidents. Clearly, it's predominantly in rural areas, so we're producing as a scheme will be implemented between now and the end of the financial year, so the end of April, where we're introducing signs that vehicle activate signs based on the speed that will target HGVs, but also they'll work for all drivers, but it's looking at where the HGV accidents are. So if an HGV goes through the speed detection unit, they'll get given a 40 speed limit sign and slow down. It's going to complement the existing signs. You know, we've got the existing signs with the 40 rounders and wee trucks. It's going to complement that. We're going to upgrade those signs to newer signs next year, just to get a better target value. But there's going to be 6 locations, signs in each direction to try and manage the speed of the HGVs along the 75. Obviously, again, this is a whole new thing to try out, see how it works. But we've had the signs with the 40s and the trucks for 9 years. They're probably at the time, so it's the time to put something else on. So they'll have a 40. If you go past in your car and you go 65, 66 and trigger it, you'll see slow down for 60 round up. If you go past in your middle HGV or your car in your caravan, you'll see the 50. So it's the speed for the road for that type.
The class limit,
Yeah. It's the first time it's been done with that type, with being able to classify all the classes and give them the relevant speed. We've taken it to where we're targeting the clusters of the accidents for the HGVs. So we're trying to get that message continue along the route. Again, hopefully, if we get the message continue along the route, it brings it right into focus again in the 2 towns. So we are going beyond Springholm to try and take it onto the whole route because it is giving us an issue.
Back to the traffic light situation, would
Yes.
there be driver awareness signs like the gentleman here explained you couldn't read in Portuguese? Or?
We would be doing something, we would look to do something. It would have to be a bespoke sign. There would be, clearly obviously there would be some sort of public consultation. There would also be something obviously like the press. We would put something up as well to say, a traffic signals activated on, speed or something like that. There would be something public, because again it's about, if we get the awareness raised, it works. That's the point. if you penalise, it's constantly going off and penalising people. Whilst it gives a benefit, it's not working as far as I'm concerned. I'd rather see that people reducing it and just going through quite happily at their speed and getting about the lights rather than stopping and starting. And then we also don't have that other disbenefit of an HGV or vehicle stopping and starting all the time.
And would there be cameras to detect any?
We wouldn't be putting cameras up because we can't obviously, it's kind of pointless in the future purpose if you put a camera up when you put engine in, because you can get under the camera criteria, you obviously have to have a history. We would be putting a monitoring system in place that tells us how many people are going through a red light, so we can monitor that, and then if it does come to that point of excessive, we either A, take the system out and say the risk is too great because of that, or B, we feed it back into the safety camera, what was the safety camera partnerships, and look at it that way.
I take it the red light only operates for the channel in which the speeding driver has triggered it. It doesn't. It's not bi-directional, is it?
Depending on where you are, if it's at a junction, it's likely that we'll probably, depending on how it works, we'll probably have to, we'll have to take it to both.
But the gateway ones would be monodirectional. Yes.
Where it's speeding.
Could it also, you mentioned that there might be compensatory speeding up. So, for example, if they came in at the eastern gateway and triggered it and were held for a while and then started speeding, might the one at the other gateway at the far end also trigger to stop them going out at high speed?
Well, that's what I said. I mean, the initial thought was to do it on gateways, and we continued to thought and say, well, why don't we look at them going out as well? So again, it comes down to the devil's in the detailed design.
That would cover the point I made earlier.
It would then come back to where we pick them up to turn it to be, because there's still speedings that come through, and it's the same obviously thing. As they're then going out, we would pick them up.
Yes.
So again, it comes. It can play that part. Again, it's up to. I think Derek will take it forward from here, but which option we go for. So
that'd be good.
In the future.
That'd be good.
It depends. The technology is there to do almost anything we want nowadays. So it's in the design. If we want to put one in the middle of the town, for instance, then it would work both ways. It may have the best benefit, but as Ben said, it would stop all the traffic, possibly stop traffic in the middle of the town, outside people's houses. So it's something that...
Because it's such a long village, sort of slightly in from the gateway seems the obvious place.
Yeah, where there isn't a lot of housing. Yeah.
One of the first suggestions when we mentioned it was somebody said, why not put it at Dalton Crossing? And that was quickly said no, because the concern there, of course, is if somebody's on the crossing,
it's confusing.
I'm not putting it there.
No.
You want to put it where you can minimise any conflict of interest. First, there's junctions, and the junctions here, particularly the one, not the one for here, but the other junction, is very similar to the Causeway junction at Fairley, whereby it's actually a very quiet junction. So the amount of people coming out to get conflict with anybody, if they do happen to go through late in the dilemma, or do happen to watch run red light, the level of conflict is low. Whereas if you put it onto a very busy junction, say a junction on a far larger up in the cities, you've then got that risk of.
It's a very dangerous junction to come in and out of that.
Yeah.
Barncailey one, yes.
Barncailey one,
Sorry, I missed the start when you did your speed monitoring information finding. Was there speed sensors in the middle of the village, or were they just on the gateways?
No, there's
No, it's four.
There's four. There's one at each of the gateways, one at Beach House, and one at approximately the bus stop.
Right.
That's our four sites.
So where's the bus stop one? Can you show me?
Just north of it.
Reading up the way, one's the Western Gateway, two's the bus stop,
I'll see it now.
three's Beach House, and four's Eastern Gateway.
Beach House is a bit of a misnomer, actually. It's where the speed, the SID.
So it's actually slower at the bus stop.
Yep.
More or less, isn't it?
Bus stop
On average.
Particularly going eastbound, drop dramatic on down, but it's snuck up on there. But again, it's
Probably the most policed area of the village, or at least it was. And perhaps people will correct me now, but maybe not so much now.
But again, this average thing is a bit of a misnomer,
well,
isn't it?
this is obviously just for tonight. We obviously
Yeah.
have the further stuff.
You
I
have,
mean,
you have the high speeds as well, obviously.
we've got the 85, and again we're seeing a drop in 85.
Yes.
Same the last time. I wanted to just use this as a background slide today. We still, as I say, we've got that.
This is very misleading for people that, I mean, I've seen the complete speeds, so I know what there are there, but that's misleading. It makes it look pretty innocuous. It's anything but, of course.
There's a long tail on the speeding beyond the average, which tails off into the 60s and even the 70s.
I mean, again, with any of the stats that you take on it, you've got to compare like to like. So if we're comparing that and saying we're getting that going down, we're comparing 8 plus and saying it's going down, but then you guys want to say, here's the line, and we say we have an issue. So that's the point. And what we've conceded to is we're saying, yes,
There is an
well,
issue.
we're saying this, we have an issue. So what we're saying, what we'll put in is having an effect, but we're saying we're hoping to put stuff in that can have a better effect. So, you know.
On the educational theme, are you doing anything specifically to target the freight companies and for that to be passed down to drivers about the sensitivities of the few communities?
We're speaking to the freight companies through